Now we will be with the next case study about Mosul with Dr. Emad Hani Esmaeel Allah. Dr. Emad from Department of Architecture, College of Engineering, University of Mosul. He's faculty member since 2002, consultant at UNESCO up to 2020, visiting scholar research project, Berlin, Germany, international expert in the field of technologies of exploitation of the world heritage for the Arab League educational, cultural and scientific organization of 2019, PhD in design and technology for conservation of cultural heritage 2010, a member of the scientific committee of the architectural engineering department of University of Mosul. Actually, Dr. Emad preferred to record his presentation because of the bad connection of internet. So please, Dr. Omar, can you please? Yes, thank you, Dr. Omar. As you know, our attendance, you can put your in the chat box. Thank you, Dr. Omar.
I would like to thank all colleagues for giving me this opportunity to share research results about the Mosul built heritage. The study is entitled Preventive Conservation as a Procedure for Safeguarding Mosul Built Heritage. Nowadays, in the field of conservation, assuring heritage preservation through preventive conservation, maintenance, and monitoring-based strategies is acknowledged challenge. The concept of preventive conservation is confirmed by the Amsterdam Declaration, which introduced the concept of integrated conservation that necessitates conserving the built heritage in its environmental context with utilizing restoration techniques and searching for suitable functions. Currently, at the international level, many organizations and groups deal with the field of preventive conservation, such as the Pan-European Preventive Conservation Strategy, the Latin American Consortium for Training in Preventive Conservation, in which Jetty Conservation Institute is working in partnership with conservation professionals and architects. ICROM's teamwork in preventive conservation and PRECOMOS, the UNESCO chair. Preventive conservation explains research and interventions intended to reduce deterioration rates and minimize risk to collections. It works under themes such as environment, risk management, physical forces, and materials. Creating the maintaining a protective environment for the collections and their care is an essential responsibility of specialists. There is a general assumption that fine-tuned diagnostics can lower restoration cost. When regular maintenance is carried out, the preservation of history building will be more cost-effective at the long run. As a result of systematic collection of information during the regular inspections, monitoring of the state of repair, it becomes possible to compare and monitor the state of preservation of the cultural heritage stock. Collected statistic data can also be used as a management tool as well as for research. Hence, preventive conservation is a critical aspect of conservation policy and collection care, since it focuses not only on the monuments but also on the entirety of the architectural heritage and needs a conception of compound value systems within various cultures and an understanding of how cultural properties deliver significance to the involved groups. What is the preventive conservation? Preventive conservation encompasses appropriate measures and actions for registration, storage, handling, packing, and transportation security, environmental management, emergency planning, education of staff, public awareness, legal compliance, etc. Preventive conservation may be defined as the process of managing with others the use and the protection of cultural heritage for the benefit of today's audiences and future generations. Or it is all indirect actions aimed at increasing the life expectancy of objects and collections. It is any measure that prevents damage or reduces its potentiality. So, what its range, scope, or extent? The scope of preventive conservation is large, that it extends between inspection, daily protection of elements, and strengthening constructions, in an attempt to prevent additional harm by utilizing all techniques needed to effectively monitor alterations, besides the use of appropriate materials for preservation purpose. So, preventive conservation can be defined as all measures that prevent damage or reduce its potentialities, with all efforts to preserve cultural heritage by controlling their environment in which they are displayed, stored, or transported. Why preventive conservation? In the process of conservation, built heritage principles such as integrity and authenticity are essential. Thus, to guarantee these principles, guidelines for such activity should designate a number of standards that must be appreciated during the management's until final interventions. The preventive conservation scientific research framework includes 4 series levels: identifying threats to collections, substantiating the risk, identifying cost efficiency means to measure the risk, developing methods to reduce or eliminate the risk. For gathering the information about preventive conservation and its aspects, an array of international experiments in preventive conservation will be analyzed. The first is PRECOMOS, the UNESCO chair. PRECOMOS is the UNESCO chair on preventive conservation. It aims at identifying research and educational activities in the field of preventive conservation, maintenance, and monitoring of monuments and sites, so as to contribute to identifying the particularities of preservation policies and practices, and developing new appropriate tools and techniques to improve preventive preservation strategies, developing legal frameworks, policies, and exemplary field applications considering the variety of cultural and social context. The second, Conservazione Programmata in Lombardy region, Italy. In Italy, considering especially the maintenance activity and collaborating with the Politecnico di Milano, Lombardy region prepared the guidelines for the planned conservation of the heritage based on the risk card, Carta del Rescue, of cultural heritage to create the conservation plan, la Conservazione Programmata, that mandatory to be adopted to the historical building. In 1999, Politecnico di Milano became partner of Region Lombardia in some research about maintenance of historic building inside the policy of establishing the risk map of cultural heritage in the region. This collaboration has 2 important outcomes: guidelines to make maintenance plans customized for historical building, and software CIRCOP. We can see these 2 photos about it, which is an information system finalized to make maintenance plans of built heritage. The third is the organization of Monument in Watch. In Netherlands, Walter Kramer, an architect for Dutch National Department of Cultural Heritage, started a small organization which inspected a monument and advised the owners on how they should maintain their valuable property. The project started as an annual inspection and first aid repair service by subscription for a small group of private listed building owners who felt they didn't have the appropriate skills or knowledge to undertake this for themselves. Not long after that, interest in monument watch formula began to arise in other countries as well. Today, there are more or less comparable organizations working in many countries in Europe. The fourth is PRICOMA within the sixth framework program of the European Commission, and in the context of the PRICOMA project on preventive conservation and monitoring of architectural heritage, 2 seminars have been organized. Some examples of practice deeply related to preventive conservation are identified and presented. For example, monument damage diagnostic system. This is a prototype decision support tool as well as knowledge-based system for experts. It is meant for description and evaluation of the state of conservation of historic building, analysis of the origin of damage found, planning of conservation techniques when necessary. The second is the 3D representations of the historic heritage, building and construction. The technologies applied to cultural heritage, and in particular the 3D or 4D reconstruction of sites and monuments. Many attempts have been performed and different projects have been realized in this field. Third, non-destructive techniques of analysis. Non-destructive testing NDT uses different physical principles, methods, and sensor for getting information about external and internal structure and material properties. They don't replace other investigation techniques completely, but in the case of historic monuments, NDT should be preferred instead of traditional tests on extracted samples when both type of techniques can solve the problem. By analyzing the international experiments and cases, we can see the preventive conservation is about management of several aspects. They are environmental and documentation, human resources, communication, schedule investigations, information and regulation and risks. 8 aspects that need to be managed. Here in this table we can see the main action of all aspects and the minor action of each one. For the case study, in Mosul Old City, many monuments, heritage buildings and historical sites have been increasingly deteriorated in the previous decades due to the military operation in 2017 and to the lack of monitoring and controlling procedures for preserving these irreplaceable exceptional constructions. The absence of comprehensible and efficient preservation protective policy for the responsible institutions of conservation of Iraqi built heritage generally and the old city of Mosul particularly is a crucial issue. This contribution assumes that such a policy lacks vital aspects which negatively affect the process of safeguarding the built heritage of these institutions. This is the spot of Mosul Old City in the entire city. Current situation of preventive conservation of Mosul Old City. The major part of effort of the preservation of built heritage of Mosul Old City is carried out by the Directorate of Antiquities and Heritage of Nainawa and the Waqf in Nainawa. Besides the relatively less contribution of other institutions such as Municipality of Mosul, the Directorate of Nainawa Prevent, the Directorate of Urban Planning, and others. Other institutions also contribute in supervisory or supporting role, such as the University of Mosul, technical institutes, bodies of the Ministry of Interior, and other research of service institutions. By analyzing the cases and the directorates that are responsible of the conservation activities in Old Mosul city, we can get an array of outcomes by make a questionnaire and interviews with many persons, experts and employees. We can get some results of this study. All official participants emphasize that the absence of preventive conservation in the planned conservation procedures and the lack of periodic surveys and inspections on historic buildings, except a few very important monuments. In order to achieve sufficient approach of preventive conservation practice for Mosul heritage, several results can be highlighted. For environmental management, it is more practical in the circumstances of deterioration of historic building to aim for a useful modification of the environmental conditions. For the external services, in a few cases, it will be achievable to manage the environment, while in indoors, within designed and regulated buildings, it is possible to plan for environmental control. The evaluation of environment is the initial phase of environmental modification, which might include a survey, measurement, monitoring, and analysis of the environmental sources. Regarding registration management process, carrying out a thorough inventory for the built heritage in Mosul Old City is crucial to overcome listing and reporting requirements needed to present the database to prepare the accurate risk or emergency plan. The periodical control of the building is the key instrument for an aware protection. It is essential to provide supporting system for listing, registration, and documentation actions of the heritage properties, besides preparing and improving management information system to establish both of preventive and curative preservation plan and utilizing communication technologies and expertise exchanging amongst different involved bodies in the conservation process. For the protection of authenticity and assuring the sustainability of heritage building, listed architectural properties should be registered in a form of digital representation that contains all the historic buildings and sites with its environments in a systemic format, which holds all remarks of the periodic investigation and its physical changes over time. The chronological scheduling of the interventions is the important planned maintenance matter. Consequently, such approach should contain a chronic diagram about the activities to be performed to gather information about executed operation, achieved results, and state of the conservation. This system should contain all information about the construction, its characteristics, measurements, plans, materials, photos, risks, documentations, level of damage and degradation of deterioration, rates of results of previous periodical surveys, description of the last interventions, and so on. Additionally, the Directorates should encourage and enhance using current technologies for exploiting the heritage resources through utilizing the non-destructive testing techniques for analysis, creating 3D and 4D representations of built heritage, establishing permanent websites for information exchanging to facilitate decision making and to raise public awareness. The most important of these aspects may be the education and training management, which has the influence on all others. The education and training of involved participants plays a key role for the success of implemented measures. Preventive conservation approach begins from inhabitants, and without their efforts and assistance, such initial care is vanished. Thank you.